Decoding the Indian Startup Stories is a podcast dedicated to the startup ecosystem. I host founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and all other stakeholders of the startup ecosystem. Today, I have with me a well-known personality who has been wearing different hats. He is an angel investor. He is an advisor to VCs and startups, mentor to accelerators, author, columnist. He is an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta. He has been part of 5 successful high-growth startups and exits, including an IPO on NASDAQ. He was a CHRO at BigBasket. LinkedIn had identified him as one of the prominent voices in India for 3 years in a row. I am very happy and honored to have Mr. Hari TN on my show, who is a co-founder at Artha School of Entrepreneurship. Hari, welcome to Decoding the Indian Startup Stories.
Thank you so much, Surendra, for having me. It's a pleasure being on your podcast.
Great. You are wearing different hats. So, simply going back to the entire career history of yours, which hat would you prefer to wear again, or which you love the most?
So I have carefully chosen all my hats, Surendra, in the sense that all the things that I do, I am deeply passionate about. So, for example, I've been an operator, which is working for companies in a very line role. I've enjoyed that as well. That is very, very transaction intensive, but also there is scope for, thinking strategically about building the company, scaling the company. Angel investing is not a full-time role at all. It's just, I do a few angel investments, and my style is very simple, which is that I invest in entrepreneurs and founders I know, and I don't invest in, ideas or anything of that kind. So my life is simple. I just support founders who are friends of mine. Okay. And when it comes to working with fundamental partnership, I think that I love that too, because that gives me, an opportunity to fulfill a very important side of me, which is about understanding some principles of business building, talking to founders, figuring out which ideas are good, evaluating ideas in depth, evaluating teams. So I think that gives me, a lot of satisfaction. Finally, culminating with Artha, which is bringing all of these together, including my writing abilities. So I've thoroughly enjoyed everything, Surendra, and all of these have come one after the other. It's not that I did all of them together. So I kept discovering new interests. Many of them were dormant in my mind, and I think I just found opportunities for their release.
Oh, that is great. That's wonderful. I think very few people would have this, opportunity in a particular lifespan to do what they want, and that too, consecutively. You say it's not all together. So maybe one led to the other, or it was back in your mind. Great. Yeah. And as you said, culminating everything in Artha. Can you be more clear on that? What exactly do you mean? Because Artha School of Entrepreneurship, yes, the name is very clear. So why do you say that, all your experiences you're bringing together to Artha?
Yeah, the reason is because, for the last 20 plus years, I have been with the startup ecosystem. And for the first 13 years of that 20 years, I have spent my time looking inwards and building the company that I was a part of. And I found that pretty exciting because, helping scale a company is not very easy. So I completely enjoyed my stint at a particular company and focus inwards on building and scaling the company and even finding successful exits. But the last 7 years, I have spent my time engaging the ecosystem because I realized that there are a lot of young founders who are solving problems that have already been solved before. So I thought, why not, help these founders avoid solving those problems that have been solved before and help them scale a little more seamlessly. So I began doing multiple things. One is I began sharing my learnings on an open platform like LinkedIn, began writing extensively, and I realized that my writings resonated with people because they are pretty unacademic, if I can use that word. They are not theoretical. They are drawn from personal and real experiences. So a lot of stories which are drawn from reality is my way of writing. So I found it resonating with people. And gradually I began writing books. And books on a range of topics. So one book which was very popular was called saying no to Jugaad, the making of BigBasket, from pony to unicorn, scaling the startup sustainably, cut the crap and jargon, lessons from the startup trenches. So writing began, for me about 7 years back, and every year I've written one book almost. That's been the pace at which I've written. I've also been a mentor to multiple founders and entrepreneurs, also been a sounding board, got involved with, fundamental partnership, have been a mentor at accelerators as well. So then I realized, I'm doing a lot of things in a disconnected way, for the founders in the ecosystem. And I also realized that the Indian startup ecosystem has truly come of age. And from being a niche, part of the economy, it's become the mainstream of the economy. There are about 70,000 startups now and 100 plus unicorns in India. So I clearly realized that, startups, and technology will be the way India will be solving many of its wicked and seemingly unsolvable problems. So I felt that, it'd be nice to be a part of this journey and help entrepreneurs scale their businesses. And our intention is to touch, the entire spectrum of entrepreneurship. While we understand the typical VC-funded ecosystem, VC-funded startups and their journeys very well, we also believe that, India's tryst with destiny will never be met unless we solve some of its very deep-rooted social problems. And many of the social entrepreneurs are attacking those problems. And we are also very keen to therefore help those social entrepreneurs create impact on scale. Because there are a lot of lessons from the for-profit side that can be taken to the social side. Because social entrepreneurs are also facing the same problems of talent, problems of prioritization, customer orientation, defining who stakeholders are, creating impact, creating efficiencies, creating bang for the buck, because donors and philanthropy money is also not endless. So donors also want to ensure that the founders of social ventures are using that money properly to create impact on scale. So we want to help them as well. We also want to touch the lives of micro, small, medium enterprises, because they are the real job creators in India. And at some point of time, we also want to create, some kind of a program like a postgraduate degree or diploma in entrepreneurship by tying up with some universities under the Artha brand name. And we think that there is scope for this, because programs, like the ones at ISB, for example, 40 lakh rupees is the fees. And when you pay 40 lakhs, you want a salary of 1 crore. And very few startups can afford that kind of talent. So we want to create large scale talent at more modest price points and teach them very differently. The case study should be relevant in a startup context. And, many of the lessons should be in the taught by practitioners rather than academicians. So we want to change the way, learning is imparted as well. So really we want to, be a big player in the overall startup ecosystem and help facilitate, enable that.
Great, Hari. It's excellent. You have, thrown, the light in such a way, and you have identified the actual problems existing in the not only startup ecosystem, the industry as such. Now, taking a point of entrepreneurship, teaching entrepreneurship, a postgraduate diploma, or whatever it is, and under Artha brand, it's a great idea, because today, as you said, there are 70,000 startups, but the percentage of failures in startup is huge. It's, be the first year to the fifth year, hardly 50% or 30% cross the fifth year. So mainly people have idea, people have the vision, people have the attitude, but entrepreneurship is much, much more than that. So do you think that your idea of doing a postgraduate diploma or a course in entrepreneurship can be spread out using the Artha brand to existing institutions like engineering colleges or other colleges in parallel to the current curriculum? Because what you said is right. Today, academic curriculum, okay, we're not complaining against it. We are not saying it's bad, but that there's a disconnect from the industry. And Artha has got a faculty who are real life experience entrepreneurs, investors, and who have seen the complete ecosystem. So do you think you can have such kind of a relationship with the existing institutions and Artha?
Yes, I think that is possible as well. And we will be exploring that very soon, which is existing colleges and institutions, doing some kind of a program which gives them 3 to 5 credits, and which is about entrepreneurship, where we teach, where practitioners come in and teach. But I think that my own belief is that there is a limited amount that you can teach unless it's a full-time 1-year program in entrepreneurship. And you can also teach practicing entrepreneurs, because I think, teaching is most effective when people are facing a certain set of problems and we
Done.
talk about those problems. So teaching in isolation, students who are not facing any of those problems, it does not lead to them absorbing learning. I think learning is best absorbed when the content that you provide them is actually addressing real problems that they are currently facing. So I think the best audience for us would be practicing founders and entrepreneurs. And many of them, we believe, could participate in that one-year program as well. So I think the best, way for teaching is to teach people who are really facing those problems.
But the question here will be will the founders and entrepreneurs will be willing to share, because as an entrepreneur, what you lack is time. 24 hours is not enough for an entrepreneur. So do you think founders and entrepreneurs would find this time, or how are you planning to do it?
Yeah, we can, even if you go to a place like ISB, people take a break from work, after 6 years, 5 years, 3 years. Many of them want to take a break from work and they come there and do a one-year program. In fact, if you go to at ISB, I think a good number of people have got work experience and significant work experience. I don't think they take anyone who's fresh out of college. So our approach also will be to take people with some degree of work experience. And some might not choose to do entrepreneurship, although they might do this degree. So they can go back to their companies and become intrapreneurs, which is behave like an entrepreneur within a larger company setting. And some people may choose to become entrepreneurs and founders. So both are possible. So I think, the idea of entrepreneurship is relevant even in larger companies, because larger companies also need to stay relevant to customers, need to operate in a very agile way, because otherwise if they don't, they will get disrupted by somebody. So I think, the idea of entrepreneurship is relevant even for larger companies. You don't have to really, be a full-time founder. You can be part of a larger company and drive initiatives in a very entrepreneurial way. And these people are called intrapreneurs.
Hari, do you believe that kind of a culture is building up, existing, or in the near future you can find it being adapted in a large way?
I think companies are gradually becoming aware, even the larger companies, that they need to be agile. If they're not agile, they will be disrupted. I think they are clearly feeling that. And they're also realizing that in a larger company setting, it's not very easy to innovate. So, for example, if you take a large company like Shell, what they would do is they have created an accelerator within Shell to incubate, new energy startups. So they've got about 10 startups that they incubate every year, because they believe that new initiatives in energy are very critical for them to be able to be relevant. And they feel that within the larger company setup, it's difficult for managers to innovate. So they're creating these in-house accelerators, which can then create these new ideas, run with these new ideas, build out these new ideas, and Shell will be funding them as well. So even if you look at banking, many of the banks have also got accelerators. Yes Bank has created an accelerator to ensure that they stay relevant with the banking industry and the shape it is taking. So fintech can probably disrupt banking if banks are not agile and if they don't adapt. So even banks are creating accelerators. So I think there is clear awareness that amongst the larger companies that innovation is very key, and innovation is best done in smaller entities. In the past also, I think companies have recognized this. For example, Lockheed Martin, which is a famous aircraft manufacturer. It's also the manufacturer of F-16, for instance. And they have, for example, created something called the Skunk Works. Skunk Works is a very famous entity, which is within Lockheed Martin. They have created a smaller organization where they are allowed to break all the rules. They're not governed by bureaucracy. They are allowed to come up with innovation. They are allowed to take risks. So I think the Skunk Works model is also being accepted widely. Skunk Works has worked at Lockheed Martin, and many companies are accepting that, within a larger entity, it's very important to do something like this.
And looking at India, because we have got a huge core industry, basically. Do you think these kind of models can be applied to core industries also?
Yeah, I think India's situation is unique. Let me just talk a little bit about this. There is core industry, but if you just look at employment in India, I think a large number of jobs are really created by the MSMEs.
Correct.
A large number of jobs are not created by large companies, big companies, whether they're public sector or in the private sector. The number of jobs that they create are minuscule. Just to give you a sense of this, the entire IT industry in India, which is 25 years old. Over 25 years, they have created 5 million jobs. So in 25 years, they've created 5 million jobs, whereas India needs 17 million jobs in 1 year.
1 year.
So in 1 year, we need to create 17 million jobs, and this industry created zero point 0.2 million jobs only per year on an average, which is 5 million divided by 25. 0.2 million they created. So negligible. So big companies, big industries are not job creators, although they get the red carpet treatment from the governments, and although they get a lot of publicity in the media. Even these unicorns get a lot of publicity, but the real job creators are MSMEs. And within MSMEs, I'm really surprised why you need to club everybody together, because the micro, enterprises create almost 97% of the jobs, and the small and medium only create 3%. So even within MSME, it's the micro which bears the disproportionate burden of creating jobs. So I think India's answer to jobs and employment will always be about encouraging these micro entrepreneurs. Who are these micro entrepreneurs? They are largely self-employed people who are creating maybe 3 to 5 or 3 to 10 jobs. That's it. So these are the people that India must recognize, lay out the red carpet, make it easy for them to do business, make it easy to open companies, shut companies, and give them the royal treatment. So I think these startups these companies can also technically be called startups, although they are not VC funded startups. They will not grow like the VC funded startup, but they are job creators. So I think India's landscape is extremely complex, and that's I think the way I would see it.
Yeah, so Hari well said. The difference between job creators and difference between VC funded programs. For example, you were talking about unicorns. India is home to 100 plus unicorns.
Correct.
But when you look at their history, one side money is being pumped in, and when you look at a conventional business, when you look at the balance sheet, you look at the profit and loss. But today, out of these 100 unicorns, for the last, how many have they come out of the red?
Correct. Many are loss making. Yeah, so is it a culture shift or is it temporary? Is my question. So I think it's a combination. So I think the way venture companies get built is that they are all risk takers. So for example, let's take a company like SoftBank, right, or Tiger Global. SoftBank creates a fund of $100 billion. Now, if the fund size is $100 billion, the check size has to be at least $0.3 billion. They can't, do check size of $1 million, in which case they'll have to look at 10 million companies. So check size will be big. So $100 million will be the check size, 100 million to 1,000 million. So when they do these kind of investments, they're not going to back small companies which, say that we will build a profitable business, we might grow modestly. They are going to back crazy ideas. And many of these ideas may not succeed. One or two may succeed. So that's the nature of the VC ecosystem, which is that they will back crazy ideas. Many of these crazy ideas will not work out. They will grow big with fake valuations, I would say, for some time. Some of them will get exposed at some point of time, like WeWork collapsed, Zomato, Paytm also going public. They also, in terms of valuations, collapsed. So all of this, I think, is par for the course, because when you try to build companies, in a very big way and want to create great companies, some of these are bound to happen. The only problem with this, to my mind, is that it ends up creating wrong role models. Otherwise, I think it's perfectly all right to take this approach, because it's private money. They're not using any taxpayer money. They're not using money of pensioners and widows. They're using their own money to build these companies. So that's perfectly all right. But it ends up creating wrong role models, which is people start thinking, we also need to build companies for valuations. Whereas you don't need to build companies for valuations. You need to build companies that create value. So I think many of the people, fundamentally, lose sense that you're building a company for valuation. Return on capital is more important than capital. They forget that. So I think the only problem I have with this is that it ends up creating wrong role models. Yeah, Hari well said. It's like, movies when, somebody idealizes a certain hero and then they think that this is the way of life. But exactly it's happening in the startup culture. You have 100 plus unicorns. They say money is available. And unfortunately, some lead a wrong way of life, which is all glittering and show business. So all these youngsters believe that, okay, let's have an idea. Let's do a startup. Let's get some money. Beyond that, they don't think. I think that is creating a huge problem with the young entrepreneurs or young startups. Correct. I agree with that completely.
So my question is, how do we address this? Because startup, for me, I think so, is an over-marketed terminology, whereas bootstrapping is an under-marketed terminology. So when somebody is talking about startups, I think at the same time you should be talking of bootstrapping also. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is no conflict between the two, because every startup begins by bootstrapping, which is founders put in their own money, and only at a point of time when the growth begins to take off and they realize that we have a great idea and there's a product market fit and we don't have enough money on our own to be able to take it to the next level. That's when they begin to think of raising VC money or angel money or any kind of external money. So I think bootstrapping is the first part for any startup. Even a unicorn, whether it's a Zomato or a BigBasket, all of them started off by bootstrapping. And they begin to raise money only after bootstrapping fails to work, because the product market fit is attained and the startup begins to grow and you need more money than you can personally put on the table. So I think that there's no conflict that way, but bootstrapping is, people want to quickly get out of the phase of bootstrapping and raise VC money. I think the problem is that there's a lot of emphasis and romance attached to valuations. I think that, to me, is not correct. I think a lot of romance should be attached to building businesses sustainably, building profitable businesses.
Yeah, that is the key. In business, it is money, it is being profitable and creating jobs. But today, unfortunately, as we discussed, the young founders are more attracted towards valuation, funding and all this kind of stuff, rather than, looking at the real issues. So that was my question, because a lot of youngsters needs to understand idea is good, but at the same time, you need to look at bootstrapping when you think of going forward. Because today is like a fashion statement, 3 or 4 or 5. I'm not saying it's negative about it, but unfortunately, 3 or 4 people or 5 students or friends, they say, okay, there's an idea, let's do it. Let's start talking to angel funds and so on and so on. And then they waste their own time. And after 1 or 2 years, they find that, they're in the middle of the road. They miss the bus.
Yes, correct. I agree.
So that's where I think Artha School of Entrepreneurship, if they can have some kind of an program I agree with you that if there's a problem, if the founders are into it, yes, they could be addressed and they could be taught and they will really understand and come out of it. But for people who are in the final years or of this engineering college, because particularly in Kerala, I think there's a big program, big emphasis on IEDCs in colleges. So that's what I was referring to, because I had gone and met people.
Yeah.
So ideation is there, but question of bootstrapping, they have never ever discussed or thought about. This is the big failure.
Correct. So, Artha, I think one of the things that we will certainly be emphasizing is about, de-romancing the idea of valuations and building sustainable businesses. So, in fact, building a sustainable business is one of the themes that we are going to be driving, a core theme that we will be driving, where we will be talking about the need to build a long-term profitable business, doing the right things, ethics and governance being important, right kind of founder ambition, because ambition is a very important part of building anything. Even if you want to eradicate malaria in India or anything of that kind, you need ambition. Without that, you can't solve any problem. But ambition should be of the right kind. If the ambition is the wrong kind and it overtakes a founder, then founders begin to do wrong things, as we are seeing, otherwise good companies suddenly coming apart because of governance issues, because of misplaced sense of ambition, because of arrogance of capital, because of hubris. So we will be talking a lot about, how to build a sustainable business, how to deal with ambition in a constructive way, all of that.
Great. Excellent. So I think I wish all the best for Artha School of Entrepreneurship. And personally, I know, you have been taking much interest in, really pushing good entrepreneurs. And I'm sure, the dream of having, more than unicorns, sustainable business will really drive our entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Surendra.
So it was a pleasure to have you on my show, Hadi. Thank you very much for coming in, and we will be having more talks and more shows with you on topics which will really be helpful to entrepreneurs and the startup ecosystem.
Happy to be of help anytime, Surendra. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.